Welcome back to Studio 5. The ACT scores are in and the college applications are filled out, but is your high schooler really ready for college? Meg Radnich is a career and academic counselor at Utah Valley University. She says the transition from high school to college can be a big shock if students don't know what to expect. She's here with a list of 5 skills your high school student will need in order to succeed at the college level. Meg, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
I know a lot of students and yes, even parents very eager for your insight. I know you also work with a lot of college freshmen and sophomores. So what would you say is the main reason those kids struggle?
Sure. So for a lot of those students, they'll say, you know, I was high achieving in high school, had a really strong GPA. I didn't have to work very hard for A's and B's in high school, and now I'm in college and it's a different game. Most of them can handle the rigor of college level work. It's just they don't know the differences between high school and college and what it takes to succeed.
Which I think is interesting. They're prepared to put in the work, right?
Absolutely.
They're prepared for the pace and the investment, but it's those differences then that catch them up.
Always. Yep, definitely. So they're small but significant differences.
Well, let's talk about those expectations then. Knowing what to expect, you say, is the first step, right, into getting up to speed and up to pace. First, you say high school teachers and professors are not the same. What do students need to know about those differences?
Right, so high school teachers have the resources to reach out to their struggling students, right? They can call parents, involve parents if needed. They know every single student by name. They can, well, they just have a smaller class size. But when you're in college and you're sitting in a lecture hall of 500 people, you don't have that kind of access to your professor, and the professor doesn't have the same access to you. And something I wish I had known when I was in college is, you know, professors are not just teachers. They're also working on research. They're sometimes acting as clinicians in their field, so they don't have the time or resources to get to know every single student on an individual level.
So what can students do then to bridge that gap?
They've got to go to that professor's office hours and introduce themselves. And without fail, every time students will say to me, but that's really intimidating. Well, get used to it, because that is a skill you're going to need the rest of your career. You're always going to be talking to people who are more experienced, more intelligent, they have a PhD. Just get used to it now. You know, strengthen that skill now, because you're going to be using it for the rest of your career.
That's great advice in and of itself. Get used to the intimidation factor. I do remember talking to my sister when she was a college freshman just a couple of years ago, and she had some questions right at the beginning about the syllabus and the structure of the class, and I said, email your teacher. And she said, I can't email my teacher. I can't just reach out. That communication needs to really be developed from the student's end in order for that success to follow.
Professors want to help you, but they can't help you if they don't know who you are.
True.
So
true.
Yep.
One thing that I remember going back to my college days that threw me off a little bit was the lack of structure, right? So high school is kind of mapped out for you, period 1, period 2, then there's lunch. Do students sometimes struggle getting used to that free open day?
Always. In fact, when students are on academic probation or suspension, that's the #1 reason I've found, is they do not know how to structure their time. And they are sometimes living with roommates for the first time, and so they just have to learn how to set boundaries for themselves. If roommates are going off to a party and they've got a test the next day, they have to learn how to say no. They've got to prioritize their time. Simple as that.
So putting you on the spot a little bit, how can parents of high schoolers now start to get them used to or build up to that looser, open-ended structure?
Just start the dialogue. Ask, you know, give them some scenarios. So especially students who are very social, or maybe they're planning on doing a sorority or fraternity in high school, or just have a really active social life. What are you going to do when everybody's headed out for the party and tomorrow you've got a test? How are you going to handle that? Take them through some scenarios. And I think sometimes high school parents can kind of stand over their student's shoulder and tell them what to do. Start just posing the questions versus telling them how to handle those situations.
Good advice, good advice. I imagine another area where students could potentially get tripped up is the difference in grading.
Yes,
the grading
always.
systems are very, very different.
Totally different ball game once you hit college. In high school, you can get graded. You get grades for just showing up, participating, the attendance points, just showing up and being a pleasant kid, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then in college, most of your grade is going to be based off of test scores and group projects, and a lot of students don't realize that. So every semester, at the very end, I'll have a student say to me, I'm failing a course, and I went to every single lecture, took great notes. I don't know what happened. I just had a couple bad test days. And unfortunately in college, that results in a failing grade. If you can't pass that midterm and final, a lot of the time you can't pass the class.
Well, and there aren't a lot of tests, right?
No.
I mean, you think of high school, there were weekly quizzes or quizzes twice a week that would help mark and build up that grade. In college, those tests are far and few between.
Yes, definitely. You may only have 2 or 3 tests throughout a semester in college, whereas in high school you'd have a test after every unit. So you're expected to retain more information in college.
How can we prepare our students? I hate to ask this question, you don't want to anticipate failure, but what if a student fails at the end of that first semester? How can you plant those seeds now so that there's a rebound opportunity instead of just a drop off and fail situation?
To be completely honest, it is not as big of a deal as a lot of students make it out to be. If you fail out a semester, the only person who's ever going to look at your transcript after college is a graduate program. If you go on to graduate school, and even then, they're going to be looking at your last 60 credit hours. Students who don't plan on going to graduate school, no employer's ever going to ask to look at your transcript. You don't even have to put your grade point average on your resume.
Okay, but do we tell them that at the gate?
That's a good question. Yeah, maybe keep that out of the, of the talk.
All right. Any resources out there that you wish students, especially the younger classmen, the freshmen and the sophomore students, would know about before stepping foot on campus?
Yes, I recommend that new students take an Intro to College course. Put it in your first semester schedule. They cover note-taking, test-taking strategies, some career and major exploration thrown in there, everything you need to build that solid foundation, and you can take that and use it throughout the rest of your time in college. There's also free tutoring, math lab, writing lab, even low-cost and free mental health counseling, which I don't think enough students take advantage of. It's sometimes free and low cost, so you might as well take advantage of it.
Yeah, great source, a great resource. And as far as college counselors go, your department, that resource is there. The role is just a little bit different than high school too, right?
Yes, high school students or college students need to make sure that they're reaching out to their college advisors. And even if you feel like you're bugging your advisor, I'd rather have you bug me than take classes that you don't actually need to graduate. So they need to make sure that if they want to get in and out in 4 years, they have to be taking 15 credits or hovering around 15 credits a semester to graduate.
This is invaluable advice and great tips for parents to jumpstart those conversations. So thank you so much. Meg is sticking around just a little bit longer to give us her take on a topic that has parents, students, and teachers talking. When we come back, will a new push to rethink college admissions take the pressure off your student? Meg will chime in with her opinion right after this. High school students may be stressing over OAP classes and SAT scores in hopes of getting into college, but that could all change. It's a topic that's on the minds of students, teachers, and parents alike, and it's a topic that's dominating headlines right now thanks to a new report out of Harvard. The report calls for major changes to the college admissions process, including less emphasis on SAT and ACT test scores and advanced placement classes. Fewer extracurricular activities would be required, and more focus would be put on family and community accomplishments. Meg Radnich, an academic counselor at Utah Valley University, is back to share her professional take on the possible changes. So I think the first question, why the shift? Why the change?
Sure. So I think in the last 5, 10 years, 15 years, we've seen this huge frenzy circulating around college admissions. And we've seen students feeling pressured to kind of pad their resumes and take part in extracurriculars that maybe they're not even very passionate about. I can think of one student who one time came up to me, she knew what I did for a living, and said, I want to go for some upper tier colleges, maybe some Ivy Leagues, and I heard it's really good to do a nonprofit, start your own nonprofit, and that's what you have to do to kind of set yourself apart from some of these other applicants.
Oh, wow.
And I asked her, do you even want to do this? Do you have a passion or a cause? And is this something you really want to do, or are you just doing it to impress colleges? And she said, yeah, I'm just trying to impress colleges.
So case in point.
And yes, and so what we're seeing is students sending in resumes that really are not in line with who they are and what they value. And I think colleges have taken notice to that they'd rather have an application for a student that is true to who that student is, instead of all of this frenzy and anxiety that students almost feel pressured to be someone that they aren't because they think that it's going to impress college admissions boards.
Right. This report right now, just a proposal. Do you think it will take hold? Do you think those changes will happen?
I do. Over 80 colleges and universities have already endorsed the report. It's called Turning the Tide. And even administrators at Yale, MIT, Michigan have started to take notice. Some schools have even started to do away with the SAT or make that standardized testing
I've
optional.
read that. Yeah.
Yep, and they place more of an emphasis on how is this student impacting their community, contributing to their family. They're going to be placing more weight on, let's say the student is working part-time to financially support their family. They're going to be more impressed with an experience like that than a student who does a 5-day mission trip to a third world country.
So how do you think, Meg, this will affect Utah students in particular?
I think that it's going to help them. Well, for the students that feel a lot of pressure, maybe they're in 5 AP classes, playing 3 varsity sports, on the yearbook, they're head of the debate team. I mean, it sounds exhausting just hearing about their schedules.
It does, yeah.
I think it's going to give them permission to get off the treadmill, be a little more authentic, and just slow down a little bit and enjoy high school. You don't have to be running at such a fast pace, and it's not necessarily going to impress colleges. I know that at the last university that I worked at, I had the opportunity to read through some of these admissions applications and read letters of intent and letters of recommendation, personal statements. And you get to a point where you can tell which students are being genuine and which students are just kind of fudging their resumes.
That sincerity stands out. So
Absolutely.
hopefully these changes will put that sincerity on the forefront.
Definitely.
All right.
Students, yep, use words in your vocabulary, write about experiences that were truly meaningful to you.
All right, good insight. Meg, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brooke.
Well, that does it for us here today on Studio 5. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and KSL 5 News at noon is coming up for you next.